Lip tints are a makeup product that have really grown in popularity, and I personally own more than a handful. Or two. Lip tints have been around for many years in many different markets, but I do think that Korean beauty brands were the ones to really popularize the modern lip tint formula that we think of today. With official K-pop idol endorsements and thousands of viral videos, each telling us that this is the dewiest, most long-lasting, prettiest one. But I'm gonna ask a question that I feel like a lot of us wanna know. Which lip tint is the best lip tint? I am embarking on this journey to try and find the best lip tint by starting off with 10 of the best-selling lip tints that are available on YesStyle, a very popular Korean beauty retailer. And they very kindly do send me store credit from time to time so I can do really normal things like buying 10 different lip tints of similar-ish colors to test them for science. So a little while back, I went onto the YesStyle website, I went to the lip tint category and I sorted it by bestsellers and I picked 10 that were available from the top section because I feel like if we're starting with the ones that are the most popular, then there's a good chance that they might be the best, maybe. Right? I feel like that makes sense. Let's start with the reviewer aggregate data that already exists. Like, I somehow don't think the best lip tint is the one that most people rated 1 star, right? Now, since I ordered these and even in the process of making this video, there does tend to be a little bit of a shakeup among like what are the top best-selling ones on the website. And there are some that were out of stock and there are some new brands that have kind of entered into the top 10. So if we do need to go back and do another round, if there is interest, then I will maybe entertain that. Also, I did make another spreadsheet. If you don't already know, I do have a skincare spreadsheet where I track all of these skincare I test and try. And I'm not trying to become Lucy the spreadsheet gal, but it just felt like the most sense in terms of trying to rate them. So I will reveal the spreadsheet at the end with all of the ratings. Now, I did have a little bit of difficulty settling on the rubric, but I decided to go for 3 primary factors that I would rate the lip tints on out of 5. Firstly, shade range, because I do feel like that's a factor. I do think you want to have like a healthy mix of different shades. Now, obviously I am only one person and one face, so I can't individually verify if they all work across a diverse population. So I did my best to judge it based on how many shades there were and the balance and distribution in that shade range. Next, I had formula and finish, and this is mainly rating how it applies and feels in that initial application. And then my third criteria is wear, because we need to see how it wears, and this sort of encompasses how it wears. So how it looks as it wears and how comfortable it is to wear. And then also factoring in how long it wears. I did consider wearing power as its own individual criteria, but to be honest, in the lip tint formula, there's quite a range of different formulas within that. So I thought that incorporating wear time as a factor would maybe throw the results out a bit, because I don't think the best lip tint necessarily means it's the longest wearing lip tint. So basically this category is just me testing them and wearing them throughout my normal day and just seeing if they looked and felt good while I wore them. Ultimately, the judging is going to be a little bit subjective because I'm just me. But what I'm trying to do is judge these lip tints against their own claims as well as with my user experience. So please take these results with a little pinch of salt because everyone has their own experiences and preferences and lips. And spoiler alert, mine are very dry. So keep that in mind as we talk about some of the more matte formulas. But before we jump into analyzing all of those cute lip colors, let's chat about some cute clothes because the commitment to cuteness is an all-round deal, okay? So a big shout out and thank you to this video's sponsor, Simple Retro. Simple Retro is a female-founded brand who launched in 2015 and are focused on creating fresh and feminine pieces inspired by vintage designs. So I have a few pieces from them to share with you. So this bright, breezy, retro-y, vintage-inspired cotton dress caught my eye because I tend to like bright, breezy, retro-y, vintagey inspired cotton dresses. So this dress is 100% cotton and has quite a few cute little details. The little bow tie, I love a bow. I'm also on the record as being very pro puff sleeve, and this of course has some super cute little puff sleeves. And then the waist, rather than having like a full circle skirt, it kind of is gathered on the sides a little bit. Like it's a subtle difference, you know, it's not a big statement, but I think it's a really cute detail. And while I always like to sort of test out something more familiar and me, I also like to branch out and try new things and experiment with my style. So I wanted to test these 2 pieces that are a little bit different for me. Firstly, this dress that I'm wearing now, it just looked really gorgeous on the website, but just like the draping, and you know I'm really partial to a pastel baby blue kind of vibe, and like it is that. I feel like it does look very much like it does online, no expectation versus reality happening. And I like the off-shoulder asymmetrical vibe, but it's still being very like soft and feminine, kind of like princessy vibes, which you know I love. So I'm very keen for like an occasion where I might be able to wear this. Then I have really been eyeing the sort of grey preppy skirt trend for a while, but I hadn't really taken the plunge yet because I hadn't seen one that I was like, oh, that feels like me. But I saw this one on the Simple Retro website and I was like, that kind of feels like me. The silhouette combined with the little white lace trim on the bottom was just speaking to me, so I thought I would give it a go and try it on. And I don't know, I'm just kind of obsessed with the fit, and my brain is already going like brrr with all the different sort of styling combinations I could do. Like for me, when I have a piece and I'm already like mentally mix and matching it, like I feel like that is such a green flag. So I'll link all of those pieces and the details down below. And if you see anything on the Simple Retro website that catches your eye, then you can use my discount code to save when you shop. Thank you again to Simple Retro for sponsoring this portion of the video and supporting the channel so I can spend the time trying 10 different lip tints and making a spreadsheet and making this video. And with that said, let's get back into it. So without further ado, we have 10 lip tints to get through, so let's jump right into it, starting with the least popular, and by that I mean they're all still really popular, and then we're gonna work our way up to the top. So the first lip tint off the rank is the Peripera Ink Airy Velvet, which has 3,000 reviews on YesStyle and is sitting at just under 5 stars as a rating. This shade range has 35 colors. I do know the shade range is quite good, and they do add additional shades very frequently to kind of keep up with trends. This one has been popular for a while. They advertise this lip tint as gliding on smoothly, offering vivid color and a soft velvety texture to your lips, with the formula locking in moisture with a creamily weightless finish. Now, I have tried this formula or this product before. I feel like it's a very iconic kbeauty TM product, but it's been a hot second since I've used it, so I figured for science I would try it again. So I tested this one in the shade 21 Fluffy Peach. And for all of these, I tested them by applying the lip tint evenly over my whole lip, as opposed to kind of like blurring them out or blending them out. And honestly, I feel like this one looked really gorgeous upon initial application. It looked really pretty on video with a silicone-y smooth finish and soft velvety matte texture that really plumped out and filled in my lip lines. Now, the initial finish was nice, but it did become quite dry and uncomfortable as it wore on. And it did remind me from previous use, so this one does tend to do the kind of like butthole thing. Like you get that little crusty line that's crusty and not great. So I just think when you're wearing this formula, I do think you need to be ready to maintain it, whether by bringing it with you and reapplying, or bringing along some type of lip balm or lip gloss to kind of like smooth it out. I rated it a 5 for shade range, a 4 for the formula and the finish, but a 2 for the wear, because I just feel like this didn't look very nice for very long, and I would class this as a high maintenance type of product. Next up is the 3CE Water Blur Tint, which has over 600 reviews and is also just sitting under 5 stars. Now for the record, they all are kind of sitting at just around and under 5 stars, but I promise you in testing them, I do feel like there is variance into at least how I rated them. This one comes in 13 shades and I got it in the shade Double Wind, and they advertise it as combining a lightweight watery texture with rich color payoff, a powdery matte finish, and vivid color without being overpowering. Now I like and have tried quite a few 3CE products. I really like the aesthetic and the packaging, but I do find that most of their shade range tends to lean a little warm, and I've previously bought products from them thinking they were going to be cooler toned, but they've still leaned warm, so I did make an effort to pick a cool tone shade, and after testing it, I feel like I can confirm that this shade is actually on the cooler side. Upon applying this, it was super light and watery, and I feel like it kind of gave like a popsicle stain sort of vibe. And immediately I noticed there was no transfer coming off my lips. And it did have a sort of light velvety feeling, although you don't really get that kind of plumping and smoothing effect like we did with the Peripera one before. Like I feel like it kind of just looked like my lips pretty much. I feel like it wore away pretty evenly and left a really nice pretty stain. And I didn't really have any issues with how it wore, but I'm not obsessed with like how it looks to begin with. I rated this one a 2 for the shade range, which might be a little bit harsh. A 3 for the formula and finish because I didn't really fall in love with the initial finish. And a 4 for the wear because I didn't really have any issues with that. But also just a note on price, because I haven't really spoken about that much in depth, and that's because there's not a huge range in the price difference for these tints. But I was reminded of it because the 3CE tint was technically the most expensive in the bunch. I do think that all of these are under like $12 US. I would say this is a pretty affordable bunch of products to test. So this one was the most expensive, but then pretty much all of the other ones bar 2 were sitting between $9 to $10, $11-ish dollars. Price is definitely a factor when I think about makeup, but considering so many of these were really close in price, I'm not really going to go into it much because it's not like we're comparing a, you know, $5 lip tint to a $50 lip tint. Although it does raise the question, like, what are the $50 lip tints like? Maybe another video. Next up, we have another tint from Peripera, but this time it is the Ink Mood Glowy tint. And it has over 2,000 ratings and again is hovering near that 5-star rating. And I feel like there's a nice mix of more nudie, kind of my lips but better sort of shades, and then some brighter shades. And it's advertised that you can create a glassy lip look using this lip tint, offering a moisturizing effect, long-lasting adherence, and superb color payoff. And with several of these lip tints, when I'm discussing the rating, the listings are actually divided up into different releases depending on like what collection they were released with. So I picked the shade number 13 Berry Pretty, which came out in the collection with the little bows because they're really cute. Now it may look cute, but how did it test? It feels really nice and moisturizing when you first put it on. And after letting it set, it doesn't actually transfer any color, but just sort of the gloss layer on top. Now I am no cosmetic chemist, but I assume what happens is when you apply it, the kind of pigment and the color and the stain and the tint sort of goes to the bottom and kind of sets on the bottom, and then like the gloss rises to the top, kind of like those magic pudding cakes. If anyone knows what I'm talking about. Now this is the first kind of formula like this that I'm talking about, but there are a couple more that are similar to this. And mild spoiler, I do tend to like this style of formula because they tend to be lower maintenance. This shade in particular I felt like was quite pigmented and had a really noticeable level of gloss initially, but the gloss does wear away pretty quickly and leaves the color, which still looks like pretty hydrated. I will say I do feel like there was a brief like butthole kind of line of demarcation thing going on with this one, but it seemed like it was a bit of a temporary situation as it was like doing space shuttle type things of like moving on to the next phase of wear, because kind of from the initial glossy stage to then like the sort of hydrated color stage, it then moved into just being sort of like a stain that wore away gradually. So in terms of rating, I gave it a 4 for shade range, a 4 for initial formula, and then a 3 for wear, just because while it did wear quite comfortably, I don't feel like it really looked as nice as it did on the initial application. Like I think the drop off and how nice it looked was noticeable. Next up, we have the first product on the list from the brand Rom&nd, who I am trying to subdue my bias, but I will say they are one of my favorite K-beauty brands. But I actually haven't tried this one, and I know a lot of people really like it and rave about it. So this is the Blur Fudge tint. I got it in the shade 13 Cooling Up, and it has just under 2,000 reviews, and again is kind of hovering around that 5-star rating. The Blur Fudge tint comes in 11 different shades, and I feel like the range is okay, but could be a little better. They advertise it as being smooth like butter, a fudgy lip tint that blends well onto lips for a matte and gradated finish. So this one upon application was a little bit of a different texture. It was like a really airy, whipped, but like quite dry texture. And not gonna lie, I feel like the color was pretty gorgeous. And it had this like blurred, soft, velvety application feeling with like a little bit of slip to it. Now this one I was sort of expecting to be transfer proof, given that it was sort of giving like liquid lipstick vibes, but it actually wasn't. And it was also less silicone-y than I expected. Like thinking back to the Peripera one we tried at the beginning, that one was like really super smoothing. And I guess with the name like Blur, I thought it was also going to be like super duper smoothing. So while I was feeling quite optimistic with like the initial application, this one I did feel like it got drier as it wore on. And I feel like the dryness was noticeable and the wear was noticeable and it was looking a little bit patchy. I think the color I picked out did make it less noticeable, which is nice, but I can't say it would look better with like a different, more pigmented color. And ultimately, I just felt like my lips felt really dry and it wasn't really comfortable to wear. Now, keep in mind that I am doing these tests during our winter and I am like a dry person. So potentially revisiting this again in like a less dry time of the year, I would maybe fare better, but that's kind of my review and experience so far. So for this one, I gave it a 3 for the shade range, a 4 for the formula and kind of initial finish, but then a 2 for the wear, because I can't really say I enjoyed wearing this one. I didn't think it looked very good. Next up, we have another tint from Rom&nd, but this time it is the Dewyful Water Tint, which has over 1,000 reviews, and I feel like they're all kind of rated around 5 stars, so it feels a little bit pointless when I'm talking about the star rating, but this is also rated around 5 stars. Comes in 13 shades, and I actually own a couple of these ones, but I decided to use the shade Custard Mauve for the purposes of this test. I would say Rom&nd tend to have pretty good shade selections just because it's like a foundation of their brand. Like a lot of their marketing and their branding is about like their color curation and it like suiting different people's like personal color profiles, which obviously I've done a whole video on personal color. I think it's quite interesting, but I think it's smart because if you know your personal color, then it makes it very easy to shop from the brand because they're specifically making these colors like with personal color in mind, you know what I mean? And they advertise the Dewyful Water Tint as a lip tint that leaves a dewy, succulent finish. So how did it go? I would say this tint is, as its name implies, a little glossy, kind of watery, sheer. I would say this one immediately strikes me as applying very similarly to a lip gloss. It has a light gel formula and applies pretty easily with a dewy but natural kind of glossy finish. And surprisingly, even though I've worn this before, I never noticed that there's actually no color transfer, just like the gloss transfers. But the glossiness wears away pretty quickly, leaving just kind of like a light dewy stain. Now I will say there was like a slight period, but it wasn't like dry or crusty. It was just kind of like a noticeable line. But once that like product sort of wore off my lips, I was just left with that light, pretty stain. So I wouldn't say there were any like major dramas. I would say the wear was pretty good. So I rated this a 4 in shade range, a 4 in kind of initial formula and finish, and then a 3 in wear, because while I think it was really pretty overall, I do have to account for the brief whole of it all. So next up is the Etude Dear Darling tint. And fun fact, this was actually one of the first lip tints I ever used back, I think when I was in high school. That would have been at least 10 years ago. So this is like a kbeauty OG for sure. And you know what? It's continued to be popular. It has over 1,400 reviews and it's sitting at around 4.5 stars. And it's been ages since I've used it, but I do have like really fond memories of this. But let's see how it goes a literal decade on. So it comes in 10 shades, which again, they used to have 3. So a definite improvement there. And I do realize with this kind of like tint stain formula that I think they're a little bit more limited in the kind of shades they can have. I could be wrong on that, but that's just the impression I get because I feel like these particular sorts of formulas are always like a very specific set of shades. So I wanted to try one of the newer shades and I got Sweet Potato Red, and they advertise it as being a water gel lip tint that creates juicy, succulent lips while delivering long-lasting, vivid color. Immediately when I was applying this, I felt really taken back to my high school days because the formula was extremely similar, if not the same. And also the scent was the same, which I think is probably the key scent memory thing going on that's like taking me back. And you know what? To be honest, I was kind of taken aback at like the pigmentation and the look. And like, I probably wouldn't wear this as like a full lip tint as I apply here. But yeah, the initial application was actually very pretty in my opinion. And I don't know, after trying all of these like new, like modern lip tint formulas, I just feel like this one really held up, like unexpectedly. You know, like sometimes you watch a movie that you really love when you're a kid and then you're watching it and you're like, yeah, this doesn't hold up like as an adult. This is like the opposite of that. And one thing I really want to note was the wear. It just kept wearing. Like I was wearing this, I went and got a coffee, I had some food, and it was like holding strong. Like even if it kind of like faded a little bit from that initial really bright color, like there was still like really noticeable pigment on my lips. Eventually I tried to remove it with makeup remover and that was like a struggle. Like I couldn't get it all off my lips with makeup remover. So it performed really well in terms of long wearing, and if we were doing a long wearing test, then I think this one would potentially come out on top. Unfortunately, that's not the criteria that we're ranking it on, but if that matters to you, hey. And I don't feel like there was any moment where this looked bad, really. The only thing is that they're just really vivid and bright colors. So for this one, I did rate the shade range as a 2 because while it's not bad, like 10 colors, I think it is, that's not bad, but they're all really similar types of colors. But for the formula and the finish, I rated it as a 4. And for wear, I also gave it a 4. Like, I was pretty impressed by this one. Unfortunately, the color, like as it is, isn't probably something I would wear in my day-to-day, but like there's not much for me to like knock it on in terms of the technical aspects. Next up, we have yet another lip tint from Rom&nd. I think they make up like just under half of the tints in this video, which I think proves like their popularity and like dominance of this category. So this one is their Glasting water tint, which has over 6,000 reviews and comes in, I think, 12 shades. Now, originally, I actually did try this a few years ago, back when Rom&nd was like a newer brand, and this was like their star product, but I think it only came in 5 shades. So it had a lot of like really positive buzz. Everyone was like, wow, the Glasting water tint is like it's such a good product. And I tried it, and I think I got it in the shade Rose Splash. The color was just like way too warm on me, so like every time I wore it, I was like, I don't like my makeup today. You know what I mean? That like negative association. And I kind of just decluttered it and passed it on. But you know, it's in that top 5 bestsellers section. So for science, I wanted to try it again, and they have released new shades. So I'm giving it another shot, and I got it in the shade Mauve Moon. And they advertise this tint as offering rich color payoff in a glassy yet dewy finish that leaves lips abundantly hydrated. Now, immediately when I was testing this, I had a much more positive first impression than I expected. I really liked the color. Now, in terms of wear, at this point, I was really starting to like find myself comparing tints to other tints because like my brain was like lip tint rotted. Like, I'm thinking about lip tints a lot. I'm like wearing them every day. I'm writing like wear testing notes. This, I think, might be one of my personal favorites in terms of the initial finish so far. I just feel like it's really aligned with my current makeup preferences. I'm just quite partial and into this like particular color. I have actually been wearing it during this video. This one's not as glossy as some of the other ones, but still has a little bit of a gloss, and that initial gloss does sort of wear away. But like, I've been filming for like, I don't know, an hour-ish, and you can kind of see it's like mostly worn away, but there's still like a little, I don't know, like a healthy look. Don't mind me while I just like reapply. But I feel like there's not really a lot of color transfer with this one. I feel like it's quite comfortable to wear. Like, I was testing this, I had some tea, I had some snacks, and it was still feeling comfortable. Unlike some of the other ones that like the longer I wore them, the more I was like craving a lip balm or a lip gloss or a reapplication or something. Like, in testing this, I did notice that my lips still did look a little bit dry. I am perpetually dry, and I don't expect these tints to fix that or like outperform a heavy duty lip balm. But I rated it a 3 for shade range. It would have been a 2 before, but the new shades, I feel like it's bumped up to a 3. A 4 for formula and finish, and a 4 for wear as well. It's not like super long lasting or anything crazy, but I just think it looked pretty and nice the whole time. And that's the kind of product that I use in a situation like this, where I'm sitting on camera. I don't have to worry about it over the course of, you know, the couple of hours that I'm just gonna be yapping into the void. This is the Etude Fixing Tint, and this is another revisit for me. But I do think it's interesting that these are like perpetual bestsellers, and they're things that I've tried that didn't necessarily leave an impression on me, or like I didn't really take to them. But this comes in 11 shades, has over 5,000 reviews, and is rated at, can you guess? Yes, about 5 stars. So they advertise this as guaranteed to stay put on your lips all day without rubbing off on face masks. This lip tint comes in a matte yet non-drying formula and boasts a lightweight texture that adheres perfectly to lips. I think I previously tried the color Midnight Mauve, which I know was really popular, but I wasn't super wowed from it by memory. But this one is the shade Rose Blending. Instantly, in putting this one on, I was struck by how much this feels like a liquid lipstick. It had that like vanilla-y liquid lipstick scent, and because the formula was a little bit more pigmented and liquidy, I did feel like it was a little more work to apply. And again, with this color on me, it would be noticeable if it was messy, and I was concerned it would be higher maintenance than some of the other tints. I also have to admit, I think the finish is really pretty. It's kind of perfecting and smoothing the lips without them not looking lippy. The initial transfer test did fail, but I do think that was potentially my fault because it just wasn't fully dry, because then when I like waited and did it again, it didn't transfer. I think compared to some of the others, which are like really quick in setting, this one just takes like a couple of minutes to like set. And this one actually kind of surprised me. I don't know if my lips were just like less dry when I was testing this, but this was actually very comfortable to wear. It felt like there was nothing on my lips at all, which was surprising because I was expecting it to feel a little more present and potentially crusty. And the crusty vibes weren't there. And I think there's a possibility that I maybe missed it, like, because I understand the crusty whole like window of occurrence can sometimes be quite small, but you know, I didn't notice it. So like, hey, all right. Let me know if you've tried it and you have had a crusty stage and I've just experienced a miracle in like crusty-less happenings. This one was really long wearing. It was not quite as long wearing as the Etude one where I had to like use makeup remover and was struggling with that. Like once you want to get this one off, you'll be able to get it off, but it was still pretty impressive and exceeded my expectation. So I rated it a 3 for the shade range, but a 4 for the initial formula and finish, and a 4 for wear. Okay, the light is changing, but we are nearly done with all of the testing. This one is the Rom&nd Juicy Lasting Tint. And I know from some of the comments on YouTube and on my Instagram and on TikTok that quite a few of you watching have likely tried this product. It has over 6,000 reviews on YesStyle, and again, is sitting at around a 5-star rating. Now, I am very familiar with this tint. I have it in several shades, and I wear it quite a lot. And I have chosen to test it for this video in the shade Bare Vine. They advertise this formula as boasting a lightweight formulation and delivering a rich color payoff that lasts all day. It comes in a lot of shades, and I did have to check, and this number could be a little bit more, a little bit less, but I believe it comes in around 24 shades and maybe more potentially by the time this video is out. But it was really interesting in the context of this video to test it out like more mindfully and kind of rate it according to these criteria, because I wear this a lot without really thinking about it. So applying this is very easy. It's again a more glossy gel type formula, similar to what we've talked about before, where you're kind of applying it and the gloss kind of comes up to the top. There's not really fuss or anything like that. You kind of just pop it on for a sort of plush and dewy look. I really struggled with some of the describing words for these tints, I'll be real. I do think it wears very comfortably and it feels quite moisturizing on, but it doesn't have super intense lasting power compared to some of the other ones we've tried. When I'm thinking about some of the tints where I was like struggling to kind of remove it, I don't think this is one of those. Like this will come off if you want it to come off. As it wears, it does leave a faint stain, but over time that faint stain does disappear altogether. In saying that though, I do tend to wear these sort of more soft, like lighter, my lips but better type shades that are just less noticeable as a stain. But I have tried their darker shades previously, and I do feel like from memory, so maybe we can't like super scientifically trust this, but they do leave a little bit more of like an obvious pigment. So that's my note on stain power, as they have like listed that as being a feature of this product. But here's my thing. I would say that only leaving like a really faint stain or wearing away entirely is preferable to uneven wear. Like I would rather my lip color be fully off than half on and crusty. But I do think it's worth mentioning because I know long wear is really important to a lot of people. So in terms of rating this, again, I have several of these in my collection. It is a personal favorite lip formula of mine. So I would rate it a 5 on shade selection because I think it's a fabulous shade range, a 4 on formula and finish, and a 4 on wear. Last one, team. Here we go. So finally, here we are. At the time that I set out to make this video, this was the best-selling lip tint on the YesStyle website. My expectations going in and testing these lip tints for this one were high. But anyway, this one is really popular because I have not tried this tint. Regardless, I've been surprised by some of the other ones that I wasn't sure if I would really be impressed by. This was the top of the list. And it's also one of the lowest priced on the list. It tends to sit between $4 to $5 US. It has over 5,000 reviews and is actually, interestingly, sitting more around the 4 to 4.5 star rating than a near 5. Did I even say what it was called? This is the Etude Dear Darling Water Tint. It comes in 7 shades and I got it in the shade Red Grapefruit. And they say, the new version of Etude House's Dear Darling Lip Tint still gives lips a sexy and sweet tint, available in shades of cherry, orange, and strawberry, making it look thoroughly kissable and soft. Which is interesting because this is actually like a new version or spin-off product from the Etude lip tint we tried before. So this is like a classic watery lip tint. I feel like it's very similar in style and format to the iconic Benefit Benny tint. Upon application, it was super watery, as you can imagine from the name. Super vibrant. I was immediately thinking like, wow, that's a really pretty color. However, the application I do not think was amazing. all good. It definitely highlighted all the dry skin on my lips, and I also feel like it didn't really apply to my top lip. I just think, like, as it is, in any type of close-ish proximity, it looked a little questionable. And I realize I'm testing all of these in a kind of similar way, and that's not necessarily how people would use each of these products individually. Like, I do feel like most people would probably use this as a base under a lip balm or a lip gloss, but I still think it's worth discussing how the product is on its own without any additional help from other products. Also, boo tomato tomato, or like red grapefruit. Some of this lip tint ended up on my teeth, which had not been a problem with any of these up until this point. It got on my front teeth, and when I tried to just like get it off with my finger, it wouldn't come off. Like, okay, none of the other ones were like this. So I don't know, I think it's a fussy product. To be honest, this just feels like a less sophisticated version of the Dear Darling tint. And like, I know people are really into like the Benefit Benetint sort of vibe right now, like doing the lip and cheek. Like, I get it, I enjoy that as well. But I think if people are thinking this is like a dupe or an alternative for the Benefit one, I don't think it is. It's not that, in my opinion. Anyway, being real, I just don't think anyone would wear this lip tint as it is. Like, I do think a lot of people would just use like a tiny little dab, like spread it around. I get that. So I guess like technically I would say this performs well in wear, but not as well as the other Etude tint where I was like struggling to remove it. This one I just found to be really fussy, so I'm just really struggling to recommend it over anything else. So all of that to say, I rated this one as a 2 for shade range, a 2 for formula and finish, and then a 3 for wear. This one just felt subpar to me. So, classic Lucy Livin video, the light is like fading, I feel feral. So if we tally up all of the points, the worst performing lip tint, I can't even say lip tint anymore. The worst performing lip tint was the Etude House Dear Darling Water Tint. I don't think anyone is shocked. Just because it did have that limited shade range and the formula was a little lackluster compared to even another similar lip tint from the same brand at the same price point. And then in terms of the best lip tint, I didn't rig this or plan this, but the Rom&nd Juicy Lasting Tint did actually come out on top. It just has an amazing shade range. And when I was actually like sitting down and rating them on all of the criteria, it just performed really well. But out of scientific interest, I also wanted to take a look at how they would perform without the shade range criteria being factored into it, because I do feel like it did benefit the Juicy Lasting Tint as one that did really well in that category compared to the others. So when I take that category away and just leave it with the formula and finish and the wear, the Etude Dear Darling Water Tint is still at the bottom, but it is then a 4-place tie for first place between the Rom&nd Juicy Lasting Tint, the Rom&nd Glasting Water Tint, the Etude Fixing Tint, and the Etude Dear Darling Tint. And there's quite a bit of variance in terms of different types of formulas in there as well. The two from Rom&nd are more dewy, the Fixing Tint is a great matte option, and the Dear Darling Tint is like your classic long-lasting tint stain. A reminder of what I said at the start of this video / odyssey. Please take your personal preferences into account. Like, in rating these, I know that I personally don't really like matte lip tints. They don't tend to be for me. And just because they don't really work for me or they're not something that I particularly enjoy, that doesn't mean that they're not something that you would really enjoy. And I take that view to basically all cosmetics that I talk about and review, because what works for me may not work for you and vice versa. And with that, we have rated and reviewed 10 of the best-selling lip tints in an attempt to find the best one. I do love my Juicy Lasting tint, but you know, like, there's always scientific progress. There's always new things coming out. Maybe there are some lesser known lip tints that I haven't tried that are actually like amazing that I might love even more than that one. So let me know what you think of these reviews, if you've tried any of these, if you agree, if you disagree. And let me know if you think we should put some more lip tints to the test, or if you'd like me to test some other categories. I'll put all of the details of everything in the description box, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!